If you're watching this, chances are you're overwhelmed, behind, panicking, all of three at once. So I'll give you not a romantic study video, not even an aesthetic routine video, but a video on how to actually study. I'll call this Studying 101 Principles that actually helped me pass exams when it mattered. And stop self sabotaging mentally. Everything I'm sharing here is based on trial and error, failure and retakes, and eventually figuring out what actually works in real med school conditions, not ideal ones. Don't worry, you don't need to do everything perfectly, but you do need a system. So let's talk about that. Active recall is the number one science-based studying method. And yes, everyone talks about it, but most people don't actually do it properly. For me, active recall always came after understanding first. Read the material slowly and intentionally, not superficially, especially in subjects like biochemistry or physiology, where you really need to dig deeper to understand processes. I always try to connect new information to what I've already known. What does this new information change about my current understanding? How does this pathway affect something else I've already learned before? In more memorization heavy subjects like pharmacology, active recall became more systematic. Drug classes, mechanisms, side effects, those need repetition. Active recall does not work in isolation. It works hand in hand with spaced repetition. And this is where a lot of people misunderstand the method. Active recall actually works because of spaced repetition, not despite it. Your brain learns by remembering, forgetting a little, and remembering again. That's why studying regularly and starting early is not about being disciplined or aesthetic. It's about biology. When you start studying early and revisit material over time, you automatically include spaced repetition into your routine. So you don't need fancy systems. Time itself does the work for you. Active recall becomes powerful only when your brain has had time to see the material, struggle to retrieve it, forget a little, and then retrieve it again. That struggle is not failure, that is learning itself. This is why last minute active recall feels impossible. Your brain hasn't had the repetitions it needs yet. So recall feels painful and discouraging. People say active recall doesn't work for me. What they usually mean is, I didn't give my brain enough time to repeat information. So starting early is key in giving your brain multiple touch points with the material. Even imperfect early exposure makes later active recall dramatically easier. So give yourself a head start and an unfair advantage. This is how my system looked like in practice. Day 1. I would study 1 day's worth of material properly, understanding first. The next morning, I spend 1 to 3 hours revising only what I've learned yesterday. Then I moved on with the material. After about 2 days worth of topics, I'd do a bigger active recall session where I'd had to say back everything from the past 2 days. The exact timing doesn't matter. What matters is that you cannot skip active recall. Reading is not studying. Highlighting is not studying. Passive exposure will betray you on exam day. Some people make flashcards, some people use Anki, and some people make mind maps. The tool doesn't matter. The recall does. My second tip is to say it out loud. This one can be uncomfortable and you sometimes need a private place to do it, but it's especially important for oral exams. If you can't say it out loud, you just don't know it well enough. Saying things out loud immediately exposes bad pronunciation, missing logic, or gaps between concepts. Pronunciation matters more than people admit. If you consistently mispronounce terms, examiners can tell you haven't heard them said enough, which often signals poor lecture attendance or shallow learning. Speaking forces structure. It forces you to explain why, not just what. And that's exactly what oral exams demand. The third thing I'd like to talk about is how studying from too many different resources backfire. The exam, you won't have time to compare textbooks and videos in your head. You'll need a ready made script, a clear line of thought that you can present confidently. Now, this doesn't mean you shouldn't use multiple resources. It means you should merge them into one personal system. You can either make a master document that makes it easier to just study from one place, use that during revisions, or you can make a mental structure you practice presenting. Mind maps is a very good practical way to do this. You draw a simple structure on how concepts that needs explaining for this particular topic follow each other, and in what order and how to present the different information you've learned so that they connect logically to each other. So this work happens before the exam, comparing sources, deciding what matters, and organizing it into something you can say under pressure. The next point is crucial. This one is comparison kills confidence. Comparison is one of the fastest ways to lose self trust. I never wanted to know when others were taking exams, or how many days they studied, or how confident they felt. You cannot live someone else's nervous system, someone else's discipline, or someone else's circumstances. If you need guidance, have one or two trusted upper year students who can tell you roughly how many days of studying an exam requires. And even then, adjust that to yourself. Self knowledge is worth much more than trying to copy someone else's routines. Up next, we'll talk about how to reach flow state while studying. Secret passage to flow state is not glamorous because it's discipline. This means studying every day at similar times with no negotiation. Once studying becomes routine, your brain stops resisting it. And only then will you reach that state where the material starts being interesting instead of painful. Flow is a result of consistency, not a prerequisite. My next point is about being honest with ourselves and how we actually spend our time. It's a bit of a reality check, this one. You can say you were in the library all day, but what did you actually do there? Praying over your notes, gossiping, people watching, and getting distracted by anything and everything. None of that counts as studying. If you're easily distracted and comparison is one of your weaknesses, maybe studying at home is actually better. You need to figure out for yourself where you can study best, what environments drains you or supports you, and only try to study if you're actually able to study. If you need a break, take a real break. Go for a walk, move your body, get some fresh air, or touch some grass. And be careful with coffee shop studying. Okay, this one is crucial. You need to know your weaknesses, like you're a character in the game Jumanji. You know where if they get in contact with their weaknesses, they explode? Yeah, that's what I mean. I'll give you some examples I've seen in real life. A common one is extroverted people in med school. Let's just face it, extroverted people melt down in isolation. They can be really smart and ambitious and put in real work into their studies, but oftentimes the lifestyle med school forces them into becomes their downfall. After 2 weeks of isolated studying and exam period, they just lose the whole point and lose touch with reality. So, if I would be in the position of being extroverted, I would prevent studying more than 1.5 weeks for a final exam, even in one block. The solution lies in dividing loads of studying into smaller blocks and spacing them throughout the whole semester. For example, if the studying takes 4 weeks, I would do 2 weeks during the semester and 1 week before exam period and 1 week during the exam period. One hidden advantage in dividing bigger studying material into smaller blocks is it naturally includes spaced repetition. So you're letting time work in your favor. Another example I'll give you is if you study with anxiety symptoms when you're studying at home, for example, because you know that in your home you can comfortably have a mental breakdown. If you can prevent this by going to the library and studying there, where being included in society and a calm environment makes your nervous system regulated, then that's the place for you. I would often get anxious by sitting in one place for too long, so I used to study even while I was on a hot girl walk. Walking is actually great while you're doing active recall. It's just something about the monotone action, the fresh air, and the movement that just makes you remember things better. A lot of people's weakness is neglecting their bodily functions, and this leads to my next separate point. Your body is the vessel that allows you to study. So start treating it like that. If you deprive your body of sleep, food, or movement and fuel it with caffeine or substances instead, your brain goes into survival mode. And the brain in survival mode does not learn. Learning requires curiosity, safety, energy. Your brain's priority will always be keeping you alive, not memorizing drug classes. And my final point is about self sabotage and my certified method that practically stops self sabotage. I've covered this topic in my previous video on the topic of how to deal with failure, but I'll include it in this video as well because there's no way self sabotage doesn't come up in a video about studying. So, my method is simple. You have to believe that those who study genuinely to the best of their abilities shall be rewarded by passing. This reward can come from God, the universe, or just how life works, whatever you feel resonates with you. I'll explain why this method works. Self sabotage comes from the pressure of passing this exam becoming unbearable. Pressure and anxiety goes hand in hand. You're insecure about passing this exam. You try to study, but you feel your progress is too slow, or the exam is just too hard, or whatever your brains tell you to sabotage you. Days are passing too fast. Bad exam experiences about failing that traumatized you. And you feel like even just the memory makes you freeze and you're unable to study. At some point, this pressure becomes unbearable and you try to avoid it. You turn to substances that temporarily soothe your nervous system. So, believing that passing is granted for those who study, not to those who do well on the exam, removes this anxiety, stops your spiral because your focus stops being, I must pass, and it starts being, I must show up honestly today, regardless of my results. Because passing is no longer granted by your results or your smartness, it's granted by the pure fact that you're studying genuinely and you're doing your best. That belief removes anxiety, and anxiety causes the self sabotage. Pressure leads to panic, leads to avoidance, that leads to guilt and even more pressure. My final tips are arguably the most important ones. It's about trusting the process, especially at the end. Do not try to predict your exam results a few days before. Those last days matter a lot. Final revisions consolidate knowledge you sleep on, and last minute reviews help retrieval. If you feel behind, tell yourself, this topic I'm studying right now is just as important as any other topic. I might as well just get this exact topic on the exam. I would literally tell myself that if I stop revision now, I stop covering this topic, this would be the exact topic I would get on the exam. And honestly, it makes so much sense. Giving up now. Why now? Why this topic? If you give up at this exact topic, it's just Murphy's Law that this is the topic you're gonna get on the exam. This forces you back into the present moment. Also, never forget and never underestimate that the learning curve of studying is not linear, it's exponential. In the beginning, 70% of your effort and time is understanding. Memorizing is only 30%. This is why later years feels easier. You're not smarter, you're standing on years of understanding. And people who skip the slow, painful understanding phase never truly integrate the knowledge. These are practical ways on how to keep going and how to complete the final revisions during the last few days before the exam where the pressure is so high that it just makes you want to give up. So if you're one of those people who say, I can't study the night before the exam or I can't study on the day of the exam, I hope these concepts help you change your mind. There were numerous occasions where I got a topic on the exam that I just revised on my way to the exam. But also keep in mind that we are all different. And if you had experiences where studying late the night before the exam or on the day of the exam made you too exhausted by the time of the exam, don't force it. And also, if you're going to do a writing exam or a test, some people find it better not to focus on just one on the day of the exam. It's also very important to have a good night of sleep 2 nights before the exam, because the night of the exam, you'll probably be too stressed to sleep well. So it's very, very important the last 3 days before the exam that you go to bed on time and you have lots of sleep. You have to prepare in advance for the exam like it's a marathon and you're doing carb loading. Studying medicine is not about being perfect. It's about building systems that work even when you're tired, scared, or behind. I hope this video helped you and you found something valuable that you can integrate into your study routine. Let me know in the comments what's your best studying tip. What helped you the most? And let me know what topics I should cover in future videos. Never forget that you're not broken, you're just studying something really hard. Be patient with yourself and keep going.